Planet Earth. Many billions of years have passed since the Big Bang and the development of our solar system. Planet Earth wasn't always like it is today. It has gone through many changes. Scientists believe that the modern human, the Homo sapien, is relatively new, about 100,000 years old. Forests, in comparison, have existed on Earth for a much longer time. The oldest forests were quite possibly the Gilboa forests, dating back to 385 million years. These early forests played an important role in forming our planet's first land-based ecosystems. Millions of years ago, when Australia was part of Gondwana, it was almost completely covered with forests. As Australia split from Gondwana and moved northward, it became drier and warmer, and the forest landscape changed to adapt to the new conditions. Much of the ancient rainforest died out, with only small patches remaining across the continent. There are approximately 62 million hectares of forests in Australia, covering around 8% of the total land, not including woodlands, which have a much sparser canopy cover than forests. Although woodlands are not usually counted as forests, some reports, particularly government reports, regard woodlands and forests as one. When this is done, the total area of tree-covered land is 149 million hectares, around 19% of the land. Of those 149 million hectares, about 99 million hectares are woodlands, 44 million hectares are open forests, 4 million hectares are closed forests, including 3 million hectares of rainforests. Only around 2 million hectares are pine and eucalyptus plantations. Around 5 million hectares are old-growth forests, making up about 3% of the total. Old-growth forests are undisturbed, mature forests that have been around for many hundreds or even thousands of years. Old-growth forests include trees at many different stages of growth, like seedlings and dead trees. Hollow branches and trunks are an important feature of old-growth forests, as they provide nesting habitat for fauna. When the clearing of forests happens faster than the trees can replace themselves, and the area of forest decreases permanently, we call this deforestation. When the quality of the forest decreases, and forest health and diversity declines, we talk of forest degradation. Both are big issues today and are increasingly recognised as natural resource abuse, and often as simple forest mismanagement. Australia's forests have been shaped by humans for many thousands of years. The Aboriginal people of Australia, who have occupied the continent for at least 60,000 years, have had a hand in forming the forest landscape. And over time, the landscape adapted to their land management practices. They used fire as a tool to manage vegetation and stimulate the growth of favoured food sources. Fire was also used to help hunt animals, make travel across country easier, and to communicate with each other over long distances. Fire management is still an important land management tool today, implemented by Indigenous Australians, private landholders, and government agencies. One of the main reasons for burning the bush is to prevent catastrophic bushfires that continue to rage through the bush and nearby homes almost every summer. Backburns or hazard reduction burns eliminate shrubbage, leaf litter and tree debris in the understory, and are usually conducted under the supervision of the fire brigade. The rapid decline of forests, as well as forest degradation, has occurred since the arrival of the British, a little over 230 years ago. The new settlers and immigrants that followed used wood for cooking, as timber for construction, and to make furniture, but the majority of forest was cleared for livestock grazing or to grow crops, vegetables and sugarcane. Today, timber is used in home construction for flooring and frames, furniture, tools and toys, poles to support our telephone and electricity wires, and fence posts, just to name a few. Native forests are commercially used for honey production, fire or fuel wood, seed and foliage collecting, essential oils, and tourism. Land also continues to be cleared for agriculture, mining, and urban development. As 95% of Australians live along the coastline, where much of the forest grows, considerable areas of forests have been cleared to make way for housing. Australia's forests also supply wood to the wood chip industry. Wood chips are turned into pulp, which is the basis of all paper products. Although paper products can also be made from pulp consisting of recycled sources. Australia, the land of plenty. The flora and fauna of the continent is amongst the most extensive in the world, with the highest concentration of endemic species, including the wide variety of marsupials and the eucalypts that dominate much of the landscape. Although extinction is a natural evolutionary process, the rate of extinction we are experiencing at the moment is particularly high, indicating that human activities are a major contributing factor. The effect that deforestation and forest degradation is having on Australia's flora and fauna is devastating. Data from the Bureau of Statistics indicates that over the last 230 years, 27 species of mammals, 23 species of birds, and 4 species of frogs have become extinct. About 1,300 species of plants are currently threatened by extinction. These figures are amongst the worst in the world. The extinction of Australian mammals accounts for over half of all extinct mammals worldwide. The clearing of forests also has a negative effect on an already devastating situation. Particularly in the last decade, Australians have witnessed acute water shortages known as drought. Drought is the result of low or no rainfall, which means that plants cannot grow and water supply to homes and industries is limited. The clearing of vegetation has increased the drying out of ground soil during drought and caused soil erosion as the soil is no longer bound to the plant's roots nor protected from wind or rain. The movement of the soil may cause dust storms, landslides, siltation and pollution of streams, and loss of nutrients required for living plants. Farmers in particular are suffering as a result of drought. Without water and healthy soil, plants cannot grow. On top of that, the majority of current farming practices brought to Australia from Northern and Middle Europe were designed for use in cooler, wetter climates with deeper soils than in Australia. Australia is the driest inhabited continent in the world, and only very small parts of it are suitable for agriculture requiring large amounts of water, like cotton, wheat or sugarcane. To supplement the low natural rainfall, Australian farmers irrigate their fields with water from rivers and creeks. When this is done without providing adequate drainage, irrigation increases another problem caused by land clearing: salinity. But what exactly is salinity? The Australian continent has vast reserves of stored salt beneath the land surface and in the groundwater beneath the plant's roots. Native vegetation has deep roots that soak up almost all of the rainwater, stopping it from seeping through to the groundwater. As trees and plants are cleared, and the rainwater is no longer soaked up by their roots, it seeps into the groundwater, which increases and rises closer to the surface. With it comes the salt. Once the water evaporates, a layer of salt remains in and on the topsoil, killing the vegetation. The salt also flows into rivers and creeks, and when the water is used to irrigate crops or vegetables, the problem of salinity worsens, making it harder and harder for plants to survive. It is also worth thinking about the effect that forest clearing might have on our water supply. The water supply of all of our large cities comes from forest areas. What impact might forests have on water? And what might happen to our water supply if we log the forests? Another side effect of clearing large areas of forests is of global significance. Forests play a vital role in the global water cycle, helping to regulate the climate by storing and absorbing water and transpiring water vapour back into the atmosphere. Large-scale clearing of forests therefore disrupts the global climate. And then there is the smoke caused by the burning of logged areas to clear any leftover trees, shrubs, grasses and other so-called harvesting waste or logging slash. The fires, called regeneration burns, are conducted to eliminate the risk of large bushfires and to assist the growth of a new forest, not resembling the original forest, but rather a monoculture that can be easily logged in the future. Forests store carbon dioxide, one of the worst greenhouse gases that cause global warming, and are therefore also called the carbon sink of the planet. When they are burnt, the carbon dioxide is released back into the atmosphere at a very fast rate. This aspect of forest clearing significantly contributes to climate change and global warming. It is estimated that 20% of worldwide annual carbon dioxide emissions can be accounted to the clearing and subsequent burning of forest areas. Unlike exhaustible natural resources like crude oil, coal, and other valuable minerals, wood has the potential to be an inexhaustible, sustainable resource because trees can be planted and regrown. The management of Australia's forests is complicated because of the varying interests we have in them. Many Indigenous tribes have cultural and spiritual connections to forests and use them for food, tools, arts and crafts. Loggers and the forestry industry profit from clearing forests and the manufacture of wood products. They rely on wood for their income. Conservation groups value the thousands of plants and animals that find habitat in forests. The important environmental functions forests play locally, nationally and globally, and their visual and sensual beauty. Tourism relies on the unique wilderness experience forests give paying visitors. Federal, state, and territory governments profit from the use of forests by allowing them to be logged, but also by protecting them. Essentially, it is the role of governments to accommodate the needs of all of the different interest groups. Many people enjoy a walk through the forest, camping under the canopy, the sight of wildlife, but also a cozy warm fire in winter, floorboards or wooden bookshelves, and books, magazines and toilet paper. For that reason, the management of Australia's forests affects us all. There are two main techniques of logging in Australia: clear felling, also called integrated logging, and selective logging. Selective logging means that suitable trees are individually removed, whilst clear felling involves the removal of most of the vegetation cover. Clear felling is often followed by the burning of the logged area with a napalm-like substance in order to remove any leftover plant matter. It is the most destructive form of clearing forests. In 1992, the federal government introduced the first management plan for sustainable forest use. This is called the National Forest Policy Statement. In all states and territories, different government departments were made responsible for the management of their forests. They must report back to the federal government every 5 years. The departments give or sell logging licenses to logging companies and also act as supervisors, assessing the environmental and social impacts of forest use. For this purpose, regional forest agreements, RFAs, have been implemented in Western Australia, Victoria, Tasmania, and New South Wales. These agreements are 20-year plans for the conservation and sustainable management of native forests. Their aim is to provide certainty for forest-based industries, forest-dependent communities, and conservation. One part of the regional forest agreements is to create conservation reserves. The State of the Forests report of 2008 shows that currently about 23 million hectares, 16%, of Australia's forest is protected in conservation reserves. Of the rare old-growth forests, 27% are still available for logging. The regional forest agreements also include the Code of Forest Practices for Timber Production, the Code for short. This code sets statewide goals and guidelines for logging. These include regulations on the building of bridges and roads, vegetation strips along waterways, wildlife corridors, and many more. Loggers and representatives of state departments are usually the only people who get to see logging operations and their aftermath, and get to check if the code has been respected. Because both parties profit from the logging of forests, the suggestion has been made to allow independent, more objective investigators to take over the job of inspecting logging operations. In the past, traditional owners have been left out of any decision-making concerning forest management. To bring about the inclusion of traditional owners' needs, knowledge and concerns, the National Indigenous Forestry Strategy was launched by the Commonwealth Government in July 2005. This aims to encourage Indigenous participation in the forest industry. Although the inclusion of Aboriginal people in the management of forests could be much more progressive, there are a number of jointly managed national parks across the country. In these parks, the land title was handed back to the traditional owners, who now lease the park to the government in exchange for royalties, a majority on the board of management, and a range of other benefits such as employment and training opportunities. Recently, the Premier of Victoria announced the establishment of 2 jointly managed national parks along the Murray River in Victoria. This announcement has also been a positive step forward in the eyes of environmentalists, who have spent many years advocating the co-management between government agencies and Indigenous people. But who are these environmentalists? Environmentalist is a broad term used to describe someone who is actively working towards the conservation of the environment. In this case, native forests. Environmentalists are also often called conservationists or greenies. They might work independently, as part of a conservation organisation, political party, or local community group, in city offices, universities, and in the forest. Their methods for achieving change in the forest, called direct action, often causes stir in the media and wider community because they may involve illegally and directly getting in the way of logging operations. Generally, forest conservationists in Australia want the logging of all native forests to end. Despite government strategies and plans to manage forests sustainably, logging of native forests, including old growth, and particularly clear felling and burning, is considered to be unsustainable and damaging. Some environmentalists have stated that the environmental costs of clearing native forests are too high, and that alternative wood products, such as recycled timber and paper, or wood products from environmentally friendly plantations, can do the same job. Plantations, which have a much higher productivity than native forests, are large-scale areas of intentionally planted trees for economic use. When plantations are managed in an environmentally friendly way, and native forest isn't cleared to make way for them, they present a sustainable way of producing wood. The direct action aspect of forest campaigning does not make environmentalists very popular within the forestry industry, which loses money every day it is prevented from working. As well as that, loggers and logging companies are concerned that the protection of all native forests would mean a loss of jobs, and they are adamant that the current practices of native forest clearing are sustainable. Although, in the past, loggers' jobs have been lost mainly due to the mechanisation of the industry, rather than the protection of forests. Machines can clear forests quicker and more thoroughly, and require less workers. At the moment, about 11,000 people are directly employed in the logging sector, and although there are many other areas of employment in the forestry industry, less than 1% of the population are employed in forestry. The first Europeans' understanding of forests was limited, and they didn't recognise the importance of forests other than providing them with wood. Today we know much more about the key roles forests play in water supply and the global climate, as well as providing habitat for plants and animals. But there is an immense amount of knowledge that we are yet to gain. Nevertheless, our relationship to forests is changing, and we have had to realise that they are not just cash crops, but have social and spiritual importance. For a number of reasons, including our own survival on this planet, forests need to be cared for. All we need to do now is make the best possible management decisions. We need to decide what is most important to us as Australians and global citizens. For our wildlife, for our many plants, and for future generations. Australia is one of 12 mega-diverse countries, and the only one with a first world or developed economy. As one of the richest nations in the world, we have the resources to develop progressive forest management plans that can set outstanding examples.